So you have physical work for leasing, being at properties, driving around. You have nurturing work, which is just like trying to get a cold lead to move forward somewhere in that sales process. And then you have the secretarial work, which is just filling out paperwork that burns time from someone driving around or nurturing leads. And if you don't have all three of those phases, you're pretty much cooked for having a strong conversion rate or being able to get online and saying your leasing department is the best in the local area.
What do you mean by that?
More deals, and we can qualify more applicants and then get a lease signed faster. A lot of leasing agents value their time more than what they actually should, and they deny people to view properties that should be able to. I was trying to go over this today in the shorts I was recording today for like 2 weeks into the future from now. It's on like the layers of a leasing department, and I think that when you're watching that and I'm talking about like showing agents valuing their time too much, it's because they have to choose where they spend their time. Like most employees, most owners, most anyone in this world, we all choose what we're going to spend our time with. And with leasing agents, oftentimes they only want to work with hot leads. But in a colder market, you don't have as many people knocking on the door saying like, please let me in. I'm 800 credit. I make, $10,000 a month and I want to rent your $2,000 rental and I want to sign a lease for 10 years and I'm willing to have it escalate 3% increase every single year. It's like, yeah, that's a lead that we all want, but is it popping up as often as it did 2 years ago? Absolutely not. So we all understand that talking to leads that are colder is not fun. It's not enjoyable. It's low converting, and that's why it's not fun and enjoyable. And the reality is we still have to do it so that way we can potentially find the needles in the haystacks of those cold leads that turn into a conversion and we close them on a deal. And that's the difference between when I was at the car lot, whether you were going to sell as many in the winter as you were in the summer. And that's the same as it goes for Stonebrook, as are we going to fill as many vacant units in the winter as we do in the summer? Because at the end of the day, our landlords are requiring strong cash flow. And the only way to do that is to keep these things occupied. So I'm going to show you in another short that we're going to be putting out in a couple weeks how we do this and our staff infrastructure of the 3 layers of a leasing department. And I hope you guys get to watch that, because number one, it will show you we have one person going to all these units and they're opening the door and they're allowing someone to view the unit. But all that drive time and all the time opening the door, if that is your entire leasing department, you have no one nurturing leads, you have no one filling out applications, you have no one filling out leases, and ultimately you don't have anything moving forward after the showing. And so most property management companies have a property manager that's solely focused on everything over a property, and they just rack up saying, hey, Mr. Property Manager, can you handle 50 of these houses? And the guy goes, or the girl goes, yeah, it's easy, because most property managers actually focus over 100, if not more, solely by themselves. And we're only siloed into the leasing department and talking about how unrealistic it is for one person to nurture leads at their desk, fill out and file applications, review them, sign leases, and get payment set up so that way a well-qualified tenant can sign a lease and move in and make payment, and then also get out to the property to view it. Like, that's just not possible. And that's also why a lot of property management companies are very self-righteous. They feel as though they're doing more for their client than the client should expect. That's something that our industry has a massive issue with. It's client expectations versus the reality of the amount of hours a property manager can put into one unit, one house, because the amount of money that a landlord pays is very little for the actual return or the service expected and given. So basically all I'm trying to say is, if you're smacking a client upside down and charging them, let's say $300 a month for a rental, hopefully it's renting for $3,000, because it'd be a 10% fee. But if you're making $400 a month, imagine the landlord shelling that out and trying to make sure they're getting a service. Oftentimes, landlords only focus on the cash flow they have. So I find that they don't view themselves as rich as they maybe are, which is good because they're protecting and making sure their money is growing at all times. But from a property manager's perspective, or even a tenant's perspective, we all think they're filthy rich.
Come on, man.
The reality is somewhere in the middle, but most units, if you're lucky, only have a couple $100s of cash flow, and that's what the landlord is going to use to pay the property manager. The expectation of that is what I'm trying to go over, which is the landlord expects it to be filled in 4 weeks time, let's say, and that's pretty realistic. But then for a property manager, they're thinking, man, I got to do all this for like a couple $100. Like, this is just insane.
You serious?
You only are as good as what you can build processes and steps, the technology that you put behind you, and obviously the staff eventually as you get big enough. Trying to service a landlord properly with a couple $100s a unit is already really difficult. And then when you have a landlord coming to you saying, well, yeah, I know it's only a couple $100, but I got 10, 20, 30, let's say 100 doors. It's like, yeah, but the workload, it multiplies by the amount of units. So it really never scales out to be like, oh, you'll make enough money eventually. Like, if you're not making money on your first, if not like 50 doors, you're probably not going to make it at your 250th, your 500th, your 1000th, because the work getting compounded on your company is going to keep outscaling the revenue that you're creating. Keyword though, if you don't have good systems and processes, if you don't have infrastructure, if you don't have good technology, those three things can then kind of create that margin that we obviously hold at Stonebrook to make it worth it. Because if I'm a small business owner and I'm doing this for free, if not losing money every month, I'm not going to be around in business for very long and be able to provide that service. Welcome to capitalism. So
Let's go.
the reality is expectations, it's everything in this business. And it's crazy how it can change that expectation. Some landlords will look at a property manager and think, well, if I pay you, it's going to go better and it's going to go perfect. And so they start saying it's going to go better, and then all of a sudden, a couple months later, they're saying to themselves, it's going to go perfect. Well, if you're a property manager promising that, you better give that service. But like for me, I don't really promise that. I promise the service of, hey, like you can either mow your lawn every week and it's going to take time out of your day, or you can have me mow your lawn every week and I'll mow it. But then I'll mow it for that year, and you'd be surprised by how many customers come to you and say, you ruined my lawn. And you go, well, how did I ruin your lawn? And they go, well, it died. It wasn't getting watered. And you're like, well, I'm the lawnmower. I just mow it. I just mow it weekly. You pay me $35-40 a week, and I come over there and I mow it. That's what I promised. And then the homeowner that owns that property goes, well, yeah, but my lawn died and I paid you to like keep it looking good. And it's like, well, you actually paid me to cut it. But then let's rewind again. Did that lawnmower promise the value based, which is I'll make sure your lawn looks amazing every week? And then that customer, the landlord and or homeowner that lives at the house goes, man, you're gonna make my grass look amazing every single week. Let's do this. And so you sign the contract, you start paying weekly. It starts out pretty well because let's say it was early spring and it wasn't as much sunlight, it was rainy, and so the grass was looking green, the lawn was getting cut, and then midsummer, the lawn's dead, the customer's angry, and there's an expectation there that I'm trying to get to in this analogy that somewhere in there, someone sold too much from the lawn mowing company, or the homeowner expected significantly more than that lawnmower was ever trying to sell in the first place. And that's something that's always going to be like up and down, like, that pendulum of like, you got to pay attention to what you're selling. And you got to pay attention to what your customer's buying, because the only way to scale in property management, because we are a small local service-based industry just like a lawn mowing company, is selling the actual time that we're going to save on the actual service we're giving. And as you scale as a landlord, you are going to need different services, and those services must be communicated clearly to the property manager so that way it stays on par with expectations, services rendered, and the revenue on the property manager, like me that I'm always focusing on, makes sense for those services given. So that's a huge rant, but at the end of the day, property managers are guilty of it just as much as landlords are guilty of it, and we have to change that as an industry. And I'm trying to do that with the way I'm selling. But lo and behold, kind of coming back into the infrastructure of a property management business, it's pretty much impossible to have one person manage 100 doors, even say 50 doors, when you're in a softening market and the leasing is not as passive as it was 2 years ago, where people would call you up, say, I don't need to see it, I'll sign a lease today, and they're excited to move in, and you can do that in under a couple hours as a property manager, independently managing 50 to 100 doors. Now we're in a different time and phase of, late 2025, early 2026, where you have to call a lot more leads to convert the same amount of leases you did years back. And so that time has to be found in a day to service your clients, and that is siloed inside of, we're talking about leasing only. Leasing has 3 depths of what you have to do. You have like the showings and physically going to locations and getting the job done to have people feel comfortable about applying. But then you have the application process of nurturing people to want to go view the unit, people nurturing the leads to want to apply and spend that money to see if they qualify, nurturing them to want to sign a lease now that they're approved. Like, all those things are in a sales process. That's your second phase. And then like third level, or like depth, is your person getting the listings up, making sure they're accurate to what we're trying to sell, making sure that we process those applications, because that person nurturing at the second level is only trying to get someone up to bat. Once they're saying, yes, I want to apply, throw them over to the third phase and let that independent team member spend their time and efforts filling out the applications with the person, making sure you get the lease built out, and then the person can sign that should be signing inside your business, and basically doing the clerical work. So you have physical work for leasing, being at properties, driving around. You have nurturing work, which is just like trying to get a cold lead to move forward somewhere in that sales process. And then you have the secretarial work, which is just filling out paperwork that burns time from someone driving around or nurturing leads. And if you don't have all 3 of those phases, you're pretty much cooked for having a strong conversion rate or being able to get online and saying your leasing department is the best in the local area. Those 3 phases, or those 3 levels, I'm not sure what to call them right now, that is Stonebrook. That's what we're doing right now. We have 3 people in our leasing department outside of me, so I'm the 4th person that reviews leases, reviews listings, making sure we're compliant, making sure these things are accurate, and making sure I'm approving people that are above our standard and signing those leases. Like, that's 4 people in a leasing department, and we manage 250 units. What? So keep in mind, like, that's what I've found that it takes. There might be technology out there that could maybe lower the amount of staff members you need to accomplish what I'm trying to do. I think we're still successful in getting most units rented in under 4 weeks at a price that makes sense for the landlord and tenant, which is considered market rate. And I'm kind of excited about it because we're now at 250 units. We have a great profit margin, and we're going to scale this business to 500 in probably a year or 2. And it's going to be a really exciting time. And we're going to keep that level of service because I'm just going to duplicate my current staff for the next 250 units. So it's like I'm finally at that time where I can put a bow on it and say, yes, that's a good product, that's a good service, and there's no need to fear as a landlord as we grow that there's going to be a lesser service.